Greetings, Scene from Martio here. Welcome to another week on the channel, and we're going to kick off with the final part of the Bill Wyman story. And the last part of the Bill Wyman story is about his band called Bill Wyman's Rhythm Kings, a band that I have had the pleasure of going to see back in the 90s, and they were, would be the late 90s I went to see them, and they were absolutely brilliant. I think Georgie Fame was in the band, Albert Lee was on stage, so it was a pretty good lineup. Now, after Bill left the Rolling Stones following his departure in 1993, he took a little break from the music industry and then came back, citing a desire to work in smaller clubs and venues, and this is what he came up with. And although they did play one big gig, and that was in 2007 when they appeared with Led Zeppelin at the O2, went on that reunion. And in 2009, ex-Rolling Stones guitarist Mick Taylor was invited to perform with them as well. Now, they've released 6 albums. Now, it's a mixture of songs written by Bill and members of the band, and some great old covers of songs that Bill has brought them out to give them a bit of love. So they're all good, to be quite honest. There isn't a bad album amongst them. So another tough one, because I really like these albums. So, coming in at number 5, we have the 4th album from 2002, and this is called Double Bill. This is a double album. Lots of people on here, but the main players are Bill Wyman on vocals, Gary Brooker on piano, Georgie Fame on vocals and keyboards, and guitars, Albert Lee. So the first track on here is a staple singer song from 1968, and it is called Long Walk to DC. Not a bad version of this song, it's just a really good version. Then we get a new track, and it's called Hot Foot Blues. Really good. One of them nice, real good songs that could have been written any time. It's a nice rhythm and blues song. And then we have a track from 1941 written by Skeets Talbot, and it's called Hit That Jive Jack. I've heard the original, and this is a really upbeat, more modern version of it. It's a really good track. Then we get a great song, Love Letters. This features George Harrison, and I think this is one of the last sort of performances that George did on album. Love Letters, of course, written in 1945. It was in a film, and it was performed by Dick Haymes in that film. But Nat King Cole's done it, Elvis has done it, and Alison Moyet. It's just a brilliant song done by them. So great stuff. Then we get a little track called Love's Down the Drain. It's one of the original songs on here, and it could have been written in the 50s. It is absolutely fantastic. Then we get a track called I Can't Dance, which is written by J Mayo Williams. Great track. Not quite sure when it was written, but I think it's sometime in the 40s. Then we get a little medley. Snap Your Fingers, What a Friend We Have in Jesus. I don't know much about these, but they're quite gospelly and they're quite good. Then we get a track called Get in the Kitchen. Very modern. It's a new track, very jazzy rock track, quite good. Then we get my favourite track on here, and it is a cover, but it's called Boogie Woogie All Night Long by Louis Jordan. I've heard the original, lots of people have covered it. It's just a great song, and the Rhythm Kings do a great version. Then we get a Georgie Fame medley of Do You or Don't You and I Wanna Know. 2 great songs, pretty good. Then we get Trust in Me. Now this is written back in 1937 and was first recorded by Mildred Bailey and Wayne King and his orchestra. Eddie Fisher sort of revived it in the 50s. Etta James in 1961. Really good song. Love the brush drums on here. It's a song, if you're not curious about the title, but you'll know the tune. Then we get Turn On Your Love Light. This is a Bobby Bland number, but it was in the Blues Brothers movie. It's a song that you will know. Even if you don't know the title, you'll know the song. Then we get, on the second album, we get The Joint Is Jumpin'. This is a Fats Waller and his rhythm song that was recorded first in 1937. I love how they take these old songs and redo them. Great sound. Then we get Brown Skin Girl. Modern song, new song, could have been written in the 40s. Then we get a track called Tired and Sleepy. Now this is written by Hank and Eddie Cochran. Great track, it's a great version. Then Lonely Blue Boy was originally entitled Danny and was sung by Elvis Presley, but Conway Twitty did a version of this as well. That's a pretty good track. It's got a great little Gretsch riff on it as well. Bye Bye Blues, a new song, could have been written in the 40s the way it is. And then we get another good track, Where's the Money. Now this is written by Dan Hicks, an American, from his I think he's American, Dan Hicks 1971 album. It's a better version than the original. Jelly Roll Fall, it's okay, it's not one of my favourite tracks, probably one of the only tracks I'm not very keen on in the entire catalogue. Jealous Girl comes next. Nothing wrong with this, it's just a great track. My Handy Man. Now this is an old track, probably written in the late 20s, early 30s by Ebu Blake. I've heard a version, I think I've heard the original, but this is a great version. Rolling and Stumbling, a new track, great stuff. Just like Keep On Trucking, another song written for the album, and it's really good. Then the last track on here is called Breaking Up the House, first recorded by Tiny Bradshaw in 1950, and a very good track. Really good album. Lot of stuff on it. It's a double album, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 7.5. Okay, then coming in at number 4 we have the fifth and most current album that came out in 2004, and it's called Just the Thrill. Bill does quite a lot on here, singing, keyboards. Lots of people on here. I think there's so many people. I'll just go through some of the big names that appeared on it. Mark Knopfler on guitars, Graham Broad on drums, Georgie Fame on organ and vocals, Beverly Skeet does the backing vocals, and Lizzie Hunter and Martin Taylor appears on guitars. First track on this one is called Disappearing Nightly. Written by Spencer Bourne and was first released by Totters and Hots and Tots in 1989. This is a far better version. Rock'em Pete, recorded 1938 by Big Joe Turner and pianist Pete Johnson. Boogie Woogie piano, brought up to date, fantastic track. Then we have a track called Down Home Girl, first recorded by Alvin Robinson in 1964, and then the Rolling Stones in 65, so it's not the first time Bill has played this track, and they do a great version of it as ever. Then there's a new track on here called Mississippi Flyer. I love this, it's my favourite track on the album. It just fits perfectly in with these classics. Then we have a track called That's How Heart Aches, written by Bob Rayleigh and Bob Halley and first recorded by Baby Washington in 1963. Not keen on this. I was never keen on the original, so it's one of the other songs I'm not quite keen on. Then we get Booty Ooty. Now this was written by Johnny Watson, in the 80s, and I think this is a better version of this song. Cadillac Woman, another song that everybody knows, actually written by Iso Suzuki in 1977, and it's certainly a lot better than Suzuki's version. The piano on this is great. Then we get a track called This Ain't Town Living. Quirky little number, a new composition, really good. Then we have another new one, This Ain't United Nation. Nice guitar work on this, some great guitar and harmonica on that. Taxman is next, and it's the Beatles, but this is a more jazzy version of it, written by George Harrison, and it's from the 1966 album Revolver. Next up, Just a Thrill. Now this was for first performed by Lil Armstrong and her Swing Orchestra in 1937. Georgie Fame does the vocals on this. It's a great song, and he does a great version of it. Then we have Cry Baby. Now this was written by Burt Russell and Jerry Ragboy for Janis Joplin off the Pearl album. It's a great version. I think it's Beverly Skeet sings it, but I think Janis, it will never be the same without Janis. And the last track on here is a track called You Don't Know What You Mean to Me, written by Eddie Floyd and Steve Cropper, and was released by Sam and Dave in 1968, of course. I love this song, and I think they do a great version of this. This is a good album. There's only one track I am not that keen on, but the rest of the album is absolute dynamite. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 3 is an album called Struttin' Our Stuff. It was his first album as the Rhythm Kings, and it's named after a track off his debut, one of his re-recorded songs from Stuff, that album he released in Germany. And on here is Bill Wyman, of course, doing the bass and guitars, Frank Mead, Martin Drover, Nicky Payne, Andy Hamilton, Nick Pantlow, Andy McIntosh doing the brass, Graham Broad plays drums, Gary Brooker's on the piano and vocals, Max Middleton piano, and on this Terry Taylor plays guitars as well, Albert Lee plays on here, Georgie Fame, Eric Clapton plays the lead guitar on the medley, Peter Frampton on Tobacco Road, George Grange on harmonica down in the bottom, Roy Cooper percussion, Jerome Watkins, Paul Carrick's on this, does the vocals for Tobacco Road, and Beverly Skeet and Janice Hoyt do the female backings, with loads of other backing singers as well. First track on this is called Green River, by a band that Bill likes, Creedence Clearwater Revival, 1969. Good version. Bill sings it in that wonderful vocal that he does. It's not a bad version. Walking on My Own, great track. It's quite a good rocker, that is. It's very similar to the sort of stuff that Bill did when he did his solo albums. Melody, great blues track on here. Eric Clapton plays on this. Then we get Stuff, Can't Get Enough. I think he's now recorded this 3 times, and this is very similar to the one on his last current solo album. It's a really good song now. I like it much better than when it originally came out. Then we got Bad to Be Alone, some great saxophone on this, bluesy sound like this. Then we get I'm Mad. Now I'm Mad is a song that was recorded by Willie Mabon in 1953. This is done very similar to the original. It's an absolutely brilliant song. Down in the Bottom, penned by Willie Dixon but recorded by Howlin' Wolf. Love this song. Doesn't matter how many people have covered this, it's still great. Motivation Mama, a new song. Jazz. It's the sort of song you'd get in a jazz bar with a little bit of smoke and atmosphere. Really relaxing track. Jitterbug Boogie, my favourite track on here. More boogie woogie and piano. Some great drumming on it. It's a very simple song, but it works well. Going Crazy Overnight, another original song that's could have been written at any time. Bill's really good at writing these sort of songs. Then A Hole in My Soul, which is a preacher song from 1965, a really good version of this. Much better than the Preachers, actually. Then we get a classic, Tobacco Road, recorded by John D. Loudermilk in 1959, but made really famous by the Nashville Teens. I love this song. A lot of people have recorded it. Even David Lee Roth's had a bash at it, and I have never heard a really bad version of this. Good debut album. Just pure rhythm, blues, jazz and swing. Brilliant album, and I'll give this an RTO ranking of 8.5. Okay, then coming in at number 2, we have the third album called Groovin, and it actually reached the number 1 in the UK Jazz and Blues chart. That's the year, because I hadn't put it down. Joining Bill on this is Terry Taylor, Graham Broad again, Roy Cooper, Albert Lee, Mick Taylor's on here, Martin Taylor, Andy Weatherfeather Lowe, Georgie Fame, Gary Brooker, Henry Spinini, Chris Hall, loads of people, Beverly Skeet. So the first track on here is called To Tell You a Secret, an original track. Great, still old-fashioned rock and roll, very simple, great track. Then we get Groovin. Now Groovin was released by the Young Rascals, of course. Very good song, and this is a very good version of that song. I like that song a lot as well. Then we get an original one called Rough Cut Diamond. I love the guitar work in this. Some great horns on it as well. Then we get Mood Swing. Now this is a newer song. This is a mixture of rock and jazz, and love the drumming of it. It's just really good. Then we get another original song, Hole in the Wall. Bit more rock with a little jazz overtone and rockabilly in there. Can't Get My Rest at Night. Some lovely guitar work here. The textures and echoes on that. Then we get a brilliant song called I Put a Spell on You. Everybody's recorded this, haven't they? And it's a great song, and this is a fine. I think Beverly Skeets does the vocal on that. It's a really strong track. Let me get my favourite on here. It's called Tomorrow Night. Now this is written by Bill Wyman. It's got a very jazzy piano in it, very swing, just a foot tapper. Then we get a track called I Wanna Be Evil. It's one of them songs when you see that it's got horns, and you can see when you imagine someone with a big microphone singing this. It's got that jazzy, catchy tune. Great stuff. Rhythm King, written by Georgie Fame. Another great song from Georgie Fame. Great stuff. Then we have a really great version of A Loving Spoonful. It's the Brilliant Daydream, which is a great track. I love this, but this is a different version to the original. It's got more of a jazz feel to it, but it's still done brilliantly. Great track. Then we have a track called Oh Baby from Barbara Lynn's O's End that came out in '62. Another great version of this song, and I don't think there's not much between them. They are just really good. Then we get an original called Streamline Woman. This has got a little bit of a country vibe to it, very catchy tune. Lovely piano on this. Then we have a track called Yesterdays, which was a song from 1933. It's a very old song. You'll know it when you hear it. Lots of people have covered it. Great song. And that was the last track. This again is a really good album. Not a bad track. As I said, there's no bad tracks on these albums. It's just a joy to listen to. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.8. So coming in at number 1 on my favourite album, it's from 1999. It was the second album and it was called Any Way the Wind Blows. Lots of people on here, but notables of course joining Billy's Paul Carrick, Eric Clapton, Gary Brooker, Georgie Fame, Peter Frampton, Andy Fairweather Lowe, Keith Richards is on here, Chris Rea, and there's just endless people on this. So the first track is Anyway the Wind Blows. Now this is a song that was on the road to Escondido, an album that J. Cale and Eric Clapton had done. I love this album and I love this track, and they do a great version of it. It's just good. Then we get a track called Spooky. Now this was an instrumental song performed by saxophonist Mike Sharp in 1967. It was a minor hit there, and it's one of them tracks. It's again that you probably don't know the title of the track, but when you hear the song you go, oh, I know that. It's a pretty good version. I think this is better because it's a little bit more richer, and the piano on this is fantastic, and I think that's Georgie Fame playing it. It's a great vocal as well. Walking, One and Only, another Dan Hicks song, and yes, it's a better version. This is from 1972's Striking It Rich album, and it's much better than his. Then we get Mojo Boogie, written in 1956 for the Mojo Boogie and the Law Society Blues. I love this track. It's a jazzy song and it's as good as the original. Too Late, another Willie Dixon pen song, but Little Walter made it famous in '55. It's a classic track. Nothing wrong with that one at all. It's just brilliant. Every 60 Seconds is an original number from Bill. Again, it's just brilliant. The bass line from Bill is brilliant. The rich piano from Georgie Fame. It's one of my favourite. It's my favourite track on here. Ring My Bell. Not like Anita Bell, but it was written in 1999. It's a new song, but this could have been written in 1949, to be quite honest. It's got that vibe. Days Like This, These, an old song you all know, covered by Melanie Leigh Skybell and Melissa Morgan. You'll know the song, so this is probably the best version. Great song. Then we got He's a Real Gone Guy, written by Nellie Lutter in 1947. Love this. The bass bit probably played on a double bass back in the day, but it's a great track. True Romance is an original song. I like about these, they just fit in with all these old classics. You wouldn't tell just listening, if you don't look at the credits, that it was written by Bill Wyman. Gee, Ain't I Good to You, a song that was recorded in 1929 by Andy Razzoff and Don Redman. It's probably the oldest cover on these albums, but the Rhythm Kings have just brought it back to life. Wonderful. Then we get When Hollywood Goes Black and Tan. Now this track dates back to 1935. I think lots of people have done this, and this sort of song reminds me, now remember back in the 80s we had Jeeves and Wooster played by Fry and Laurie, and it's got that silent comedy feel to it as well. It's brilliant. I love that track. Crazy He Calls Me is the next track. Just a modern day swing song. Brilliant. And then we got Struttin' Our Stuff. Done a few of these. Again, a great track, original track that could have been written back in the 1940s. Absolutely wonderful, and the guitar work on this is terrific. This is my favourite Rhythm Kings album because the blend, how the new and old just blend in, and you just can't tell which song was written when. It's got a lovely flow to it. It's a superb album. You got some gentle stuff, some really jazzy stuff. It's just a wonderful album to listen to. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9 out of 10. So there we go. We have gone through all of Bill Wyman's sort of catalogue. I don't think there's anything I've missed, but I'm sure if I've missed something, someone will let me know. Really enjoyed doing Bill Wyman. He's still one of my favourite members of the Rolling Stones, and you know, I've seen him twice with the Stones and with the Rhythm Kings, and they were a great band. Still are. I think they still sort of go out and tour. So next week we start another story, and we're going to have a look at the work of the late great David Crosby. So we're going to start off, of course, with the Byrds. So that's next week. Coming up shortly will be the classic album, and this week we got an 80s album from the Talking Heads, Remain in the Light. A lot of people say it was their best album, but is it? We'll find out very soon. So bye for now.